Hi, Jody here from Healing Journey, www.healingjourneyservices.com. Welcome to this week's edition of Live Talk about everything related to poop. So I want to talk a little bit today about SIBO or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth as being one of the main causes of your symptoms of IBS. So I'm in the process of building and launching a wicked new do-it-yourself online program called Gut Instinct. And this program is going to do a deeper dive into what could be at the root of your gut problems. And SIBO is something that we go into in this 14-week program that's going to be launching in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for more information on that. I'm really excited to launch that. But today we're going to be talking a little bit more about what could be one of the things that's causing your IBS symptoms. So a lot of people today have gut issues, and they will go to their doctor and they'll get this diagnosis slapped on them called IBS. And I tend to say that IBS stands for I don't know bullshit. But the conventional medical community is getting more and more on board with something called SIBO because there's much more research backing it up. And so today I want to talk a little bit about, so it's going to be a two-part series. This week we're going to talk a little bit about what SIBO is and what causes it. And then I'm going to go into some treatment options the next time I go live. So, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay, and so what essentially that is that's when the good bacteria in your colon migrates up to your small intestine. So a lot of people don't really understand that the probiotics that you're taking actually aren't meant to be in your small intestine at all. They're meant for your large intestine. That's where we want to see all that normal, healthy flora that people talk about. We want to see that nice diversity in the large intestine. And what can happen is that the good bacteria will start to grow in the small intestine where it doesn't belong. So just to give you a bit of a contrast, so we want to see less than 10,000 bacteria per milliliter of fluid in your small intestine, and that's contrasted to 100 billion bacteria per milliliter of fluid in your large intestine. So huge difference here. And so when we get SIBO migrating up, or this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, so that good bacteria migrating up to the small intestine, we get a lot of the nasty symptoms that are associated with people's gut issues. So it can be constipation, it can be diarrhea, it can be diarrhea that alternates with constipation. It's going to be that gas. So sometimes people might feel super bloated because their stomach's full of gas. So it could be that gas feeling. It could be stomach pain because you're so gassy, right? A lot of burping, a lot of belching, a lot of farting, really embarrassing symptoms and very, very, very uncomfortable. Your body's telling you like, hey, something is wrong. Please, please, please deal with this. And a lot of people just don't know what to do. And so they go to their doctor, and that's where they get that IBS diagnosis slapped on them. And so there are three types of bacteria that are going to migrate up to your small intestine, three types of gas-producing bacteria. So the first gas that bacteria can produce is hydrogen gas, okay? The next thing is going to be methane gas, and then we also have a hydrogen sulfide gas. And each gas is associated with different symptoms, and it's actually associated with different outcomes, and is associated with different bacteria that causes it. So a lot of the bacteria in today's commonly consumed probiotics, so the lactobacillus species, for example, is commonly producing that hydrogen gas that you're seeing. And with hydrogen gas, you're going to see that loose, chronically loose stool, that diarrhea kind of stool. That's what you're seeing with the hydrogen gas kind of type of bacteria. Okay. And so that's why when some of these individuals that have this, they take probiotics, they actually feel worse because the probiotics are lactobacillus, generally speaking. There's a lactobacillus species in the probiotic. And so you're going to be feeding that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and making that problem worse. So it's a really good way to tell is if you take a probiotic and you feel worse, it's a good way to tell that you may have SIBO. Then there are the methane gas producing bacteria. And this bacteria, what's interesting about it is it's commonly associated with constipation. And if you have infertility issues, it can be linked with this as well, which is fascinating to me. So if you have interstitial cystitis, endometriosis, irregular periods, lack of a period, if you've had multiple miscarriages, PCOS, so a lot of the hormone issues have been linked with the methane producing gas type of SIBO. Really, really interesting. The other one that we tend to see is the hydrogen sulfide gas, and this is associated with stinky farts. Sulfide smells disgusting, so that would kind of make sense. And this kind of gas actually has been linked with chronic fatigue, with fibromyalgia, and it will also produce gas when it comes in contact with heavy metals. So if you're somebody who has a lot of heavy metals in the system, when the bacteria produces hydrogen gas the hydrogen sulfide when it comes in contact with heavy metals. Okay. And so those are kind of the three different types of gas that we see produced with SIBO. And we know this to be the case because only bacteria can produce these gases, and they're not meant to be in the small intestine. So bacteria that grows in the small intestine is going to cause a whole host of problems. The main one is it's going to interfere with normal absorption and digestion of your food. And it's also going to link to leaky gut issues. Okay, so it's going to produce lots of, it's going to prevent the body from being able to break down carbohydrates properly. And so basically you're going to get nutritional deficiencies, and that's because this gas is going to be consuming the carbohydrates for you. It's also going to be causing leaky gut. So on the lining of your gut, if you've heard me talk about leaky gut before, you have these, microvilli that are kind of like, coral. If you think about coral, it absorbs the nutrients through those beautiful kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but that's what makes a coral beautiful, right? Is the ability to absorb those nutrients through that beautiful kind of coral-like structure. And essentially our gut is the same. And so we're going to absorb nutrients through there, and we're also going to create digestive enzymes to break down our food through these microvilli. And so the microvilli becomes damaged when you have SIBO, and so it actually furthers that cycle, because then you're not going to be able to produce the enzymes that are needed to break down food. So let's talk about milk, for example. So you need to produce a lactase enzyme to break down the lactose that's found in milk. And if your microvilli are atrophied, so they kind of look like this, you're not going to be able to produce that lactase, and so you're not going to be able to break down your food properly, and so then you're going to get a lot of gas, because guess what's going to help break that down? The unwanted SIBO bacteria. And so you're going to start to ferment it in your small intestine, and you're going to get loads and loads and loads of gas, and it's going to be super, super uncomfortable. And so this is where you get that link between leaky gut and autoimmune diseases, and between SIBO and autoimmune diseases, because SIBO causes leaky gut, and leaky gut can lead to autoimmune diseases, because now you're getting particles floating into your bloodstream, and you're raising your immune system, because those particles do not belong there. And so your immune alarms are going to go off, and it's going to cause inflammation, and then eventually it's going to trickle down to autoimmune diseases. Okay. Another kind of a cause, so why does SIBO occur, is disruption of the migrating motor complex. So this is huge within the SIBO world. Okay, so basically in a healthy person, we want to see the migrating motor complex happen 11 times a day. And in someone with SIBO, we see this migrating motor complex happen 3 times a day. So the migrating motor complex is what's responsible for that peristaltic kind of cleaning wave motion. So when you're eating, the food's going to go through your small intestine, and then you're going to have these sweepers. That's the migrating migrating motor complex kind of come up, and it's going to sweep the small intestine and prevent bacteria from growing there. So if you don't have the sweepers, your body's kind of really low on sweepers, the migrating motor complex isn't working, then you're not going to be cleaning up those fragments left in there, those food particles. And so then the bacteria is going to grow because they're going to say, hey, we can see that there's food that needs help here, so we're going to help you. And it's going to be super uncomfortable because of it. And so the migrating motor complex can happen with intestinal nerve damage. It can become damaged. It can become damaged with high histamine levels. If you're eating too frequently, it can become damaged. And it can also, there's been research that's been done with certain types of travelers bugs. It can also damage the migrating motor complex, or acute gastritis, traveler's diarrhea. And anything that slows motility. So if you have hypothyroidism, scleroderma can be another big one. If you have stress, if you have heavy metal toxicity, neurotransmitter imbalances, if you've been on opiates, methadone, anything like that, it's going to be slowing the transit down. And so you're going to be giving more opportunity for that bacteria to grow in the small intestine. If you have insufficient stomach acid production, then that's going to be another one that's going to cause issues for you. And that's because the stomach acid kind of acts to sterilize the upper part of the small intestine, as well as the pancreatic enzymes and bile. And so if all of those are insufficient, then you're going to have more opportunity for that small intestinal bacterial to overgrow. Parasites is another big one. So if you have parasitic damage, it can cause damage to the GI tract, which then is a welcoming environment for SIBO. Moderate to heavy alcohol consumption can also do this. So one Swedish study found that 90% of alcoholics had SIBO, which is fascinating. The ileocecal valve. So this is the valve that kind of connects the small intestine to the large intestine. If there's damage there, if it becomes stuck open, then you're going to get a constant migration of this bacteria up into the small intestine. Vagal nerve damage. This is another one of my favorites because I am fascinated by the gut. Let's get this right. The gut-brain connection. And so if your vagal nerve is damaged, then you're not going to be activating proper digestion there. So your vagal nerve is part of your parasympathetic rest and digest system. And so it's going to activate proper movement of your stool through there. And there can be various different reasons that might be damaged. And that's really going to impact your migrating motor complex as well. And if you have like more physical issues, like if you have obstructions or fistulas or something like that, that's also going to cause some damage to your gut, and it's going to lead to SIBO. So what's really interesting to me is if you really take a step back and look at it, SIBO is actually very, very functional. So it's your body's way of kind of adapting to something that is broken. So, if your migrating motor complex isn't working and food's stuck in there for whatever reason, if parasites have damaged it, if your microvilli aren't healthy, if all of these things are going on, then you're not digesting food properly. And so your body goes, hey, we need to get this food fermented somehow. And so that's what's causing that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So really important to note that there is a cause underneath the cause of your IBS. Okay, so it's a little bit of layers. So I talked about a lot of the symptoms of SIBO, but want to really clearly go over them. Abdominal pain, bloating, looking like you're pregnant. I know this has been me. Somebody actually offered me a seat on a subway because they thought I was pregnant. Nope, pregnant with SIBO. Constipation, alternating with diarrhea or not. Diarrhea alternating with constipation or not. Skin issues can be a big one. Histamine intolerance, malnutrition. So if you're getting blood work back and you're noticing you have iron anemia, if you have B12 deficiency, if you have loads of food sensitivities, even autoimmune diseases, all of those things can be symptoms of SIBO for sure for you. Okay, so that's kind of an introduction into small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and what it's all about. So we're going to get in a little bit more the next time I go live, so be sure to tune in to talk a little bit more about how you treat SIBO. See you then.